Welcome to the Truer Business Podcast with Kara Ferreira
and Lauren Van Mullum. This season, we're looking at how online entrepreneurs built businesses around what they wanted for their lives.
We're talking to people who broke out of the follow my formula mindset to find what worked for them so that you can find the way that works for you.
What do you really want? I'm so excited to welcome Kim Kimball. She is a somatic leadership coach, doctor of physical therapy, and founder of Kim Kimball Coaching, where she helps highly sensitive and neurodivergent entrepreneurs build businesses that honor their wiring and feel sustainable from the inside out. She's also the host of one of my favorite podcasts, Sensitive. So please find that podcast next. Listen to all of it because I have.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
So Kim, you were so incredibly kind. You offered to just hop on a casual call with me and just talk about how do we do this? How do we do this motherhood entrepreneurship thing? Because throughout the past 9 months, I've gone through every stage of panic about how do I keep my business baby alive while I'm keeping an actual baby alive.
Yes.
And that conversation was so interesting. I really wanted to have you on as one of the people that we talk with in this sort of how do you baby proof your business mini podcast series. And one of the things that stood out to me in our conversation was how you revamped your entire business after your son was born. So I want to start with that before and after. What was your business like? And then what had to shift?
Yeah, so I'm laughing because maybe some of the listeners are less naive than I was going into the postpartum period. I did so much planning for my birth because I think that's the part that scared me the most, right? It's I did so much mental preparation for the physical element of it. And then I did the planning of, okay, I want to cover my bases of I wanted to give myself 3 months of maternity leave. So I planned for that. And then beyond that, I didn't really do any planning because I was like, well, certainly I'm just going to come back to business as usual after that. It's just going to be the 3 months that I've given myself and then I'm going to come back to business as usual. So again, maybe some folks are less naive than I was, but at the end of the 3 months, I was like, wait a second. There is no returning to business as usual. There is no going back to what it was before. And what it was before, to answer your question, is I was very, very deep and solely one-on-one coaching. That's all I did. It was a strategic thing for me to do that because it's what I loved to do. In other words, not quote unquote scaling was true for me and what I wanted, right? And so I actually had a lot of resistance to group programs because I really preferred the intimacy. I preferred the depth work. I really like to go deep with folks. And so I wasn't even thinking along the lines of, I will not have time to do the amount of one-on-one coaching that I was doing beforehand, right? And so my son and I had a very challenging breastfeeding journey, and it took up a ton of my time. And we did that until he was 17 months old. So it was quite a long journey as well. It's I was having to do that between each and every session, and your values shift after you have a baby. At least they did for me. My values shifted. I remember before I had my son feeling literally a feeling, and I know we connected on this, Lauren, a frantic feeling of, oh my gosh, I don't know how I'm going to let go. I was so afraid of what was going to happen to my business. I was so fearful because I had spent so much time building it. It was established. I've been doing business 8 years now. It was 6 years in at that point. So it wasn't a brand new thing that I was just oh, I haven't put that much time in, I'll just let it go. No, it was not that. It was very much like you said, it felt like my first child. And so it was something I felt very, very protective over. And I just remember going in kind of these groups and forums that I was in. I'm like, listen, how do you do this? how do you make sure that your business stays that it doesn't get like pushed to some back burner. And of course, I got wonderful advice from some other business owners, but I did not anticipate the way my offerings would need to shift and not just how I was showing up. I didn't really anticipate how my entire business model would need to shift. I didn't anticipate how my values would shift and how really I did anticipate the capacity bit, obviously, of like, I'm not going to have as much time to give to this. But I think the lived experience of that versus the like in theory-ness of it was two very different things. So yeah, I had to completely, like the before was solely one-on-one, and then the after I had to completely revamp. I started out with, and you guys are going to laugh, but I wanted to give myself 3 months, like I said, of maternity leave. And I am somebody, and I know this even more about myself now versus before, but I'm somebody that craves and needs depth and intellectual stimulation. Like I have to have it. It is not something that I can do without. And so kind of the newborn stage was very challenging for me because I need that intellectual, and I'm using need, I'm emphasizing need because it's not a want. It's truly a need where I do not feel mentally well when I don't have that intellectual stimulation. And my business gives me a ton of that, right? And so I theoretically was giving myself the 3 months of maternity leave, but I started thinking and I was like, I miss my clients so much. And I just like, I want and need the intellectual stimulation of this. And so I came up with this thing. I was like, I'm up at 2 a.m. anyway. I'm up and I'm pumping and I'm breastfeeding and I'm all this stuff. I'm awake. Why don't I do something called pumping sessions? And so I set up these Voxer sessions where somebody would Vox me, the night before, whatever their coaching challenge was. And then I would get back to them and they would literally hear the pump going in the background. And I would Vox them with my response. And I would just say, make sure, your phone is on airplane mode, whatever, because I am going to message you at 2, 3, 4 a.m., whatever it may be. And then they would have that drop waiting for them the next morning. And it was so great for me for a couple of reasons. A, obviously I was doing it in the time that I had available. B, it was giving me the intellectual stimulation that I needed. C, it was helping me still serve my clients. But it was also really just honoring where I was and giving me all the things that I needed. And I had to really, I guess, go through this discernment process for me because I know you all know this, but there's so many ideas that people have about what you should do in your postpartum period. And I really had to have so much of a discernment. I'm like, am I just pushing through? Am I doing what I think I need to be doing of going back to my business? Is this me pushing myself beyond what I should do? And I really came to the conclusion, I'm like, nah, I just need this intellectual stimulation. I need to do this for me. And I'm doing it in a way that is still honoring myself and honoring my baby. I'm not taking anything away from him by doing this. So that was kind of my first step into how is this business going to shift with me here, which is a whole huge tenet of my work in general is honoring your season, honoring your capacity. If I try to keep myself running my business as just somebody that's just married but has all the free time in the world and doesn't have a newborn, that is not going to be a right fit. And so I had to figure out how to pivot with that. And a lot of that was asynchronous for me. And I would say it stayed that way up until my son was 2 years old. And then the asynchronous got more tricky because he's real verbal and yelling in the background. And I'm having to tell him hey, mommy's almost done. So it got more tricky at that point. But when he was really little and sleeping a lot, and I would say up until 1, asynchronous was a godsend for me because I could do everything on my own time. I didn't need to have a nanny. I didn't need to have childcare. I could do it within my capacity, et cetera, et cetera. And then I created the whole new offering of the sanctuary, which was my membership model, which I really had to think outside of the box of, okay, what's a way where I can still have the depth that I want with people? And that is the reason why I stayed with one-on-one work so long that I really want, while still no longer just having to do these one-on-one sessions where quite frankly, I don't have enough time to be able to have all these one-on-one sessions that I would want. So that's a very long answer to your question. But hopefully that paints the picture for the before and after.
It does. And a couple things really stand out to me that asynchronicity, like the asynchronous offers of being able to deliver something on your own time when you have the energy, the mental capacity, that's really interesting. And that's something I'm going to try to work into my business model for next year. I've got a couple ways that I do that, but I also love, I love the one-to-one and being on calls with somebody and having that focus. So yeah, it's hard to let go of, but there are more intense forms of copywriting where it requires a lot of energy and focus, and I think I'm ready to let that kind of offer go. But the other thing is, which this is work that I came to very late, I feel like I think we should be taught this from the ground up, ideally, but being able to recognize what is a need, what is a want, because I've realized that I need intellectual stimulation, absolutely. Like I've got to keep my mind busy. For me, I need physical outlets for my energy. And I was talking to my wonderful midwives the other day, and they've been so incredibly supportive, especially because I'm quirky, right? Neurodivergent, definitely. Quirky, absolutely. I don't tend to follow beaten paths well. I suffer when I try. And I was trying to explain to them that being on maternity leave is like chugging 5 espressos and not having anything to do with that energy.
Oh, what a good description.
And yeah, it took me a really long time to figure out that I actually am a very high energy person, but I spend it really quickly too. So I never feel like I'm high energy until I don't have a place to spend it. So I've been going stir crazy, which is why I'm so grateful to Kara for being like, yeah, we'll do this limited podcast. You're insane, but we're going to do it. You've never said that, but but yeah, no, just being able to identify, here's what I need to be a sane and happy person. Because I think a lot of women don't know how to do that fundamentally.
Yeah, I totally agree. And then when we don't know those things, it's so easy to get sucked up in the shoulds of whatever we think of the fourth trimester or more extended postpartum period, because it, as I mentioned before, it is something that people have such strong opinions on. And it is one of those things that people are going to give you those opinions and tell you, like, it's one of those things where, like, whatever you choose, you're going to be wrong, right? And so if we don't have firmly established, this is actually what I need to feel. And granted, I think that there's some experimentation that is there because it's a new, if you're becoming a first time parent, it's a new scenario that you truly don't know. But there are some things like my need for intellectual stimulation that has been there forever. And it's something that I know about myself, and I can probably predict that me kind of sitting around for 3 months is not going to do well for me if I don't have some kind of an outlet like you're talking about.
Yes. So we were talking earlier about leveraged offers. So there's asynchronous offers, but there's also the leveraging that requires less time, maybe serving more people, making more money. And I've been trying to figure this out in my business like forever. And now I have to. Like, I'm extremely motivated. I'm finally going to crack the code. But how do you approach helping people crack the code of leveraging the time to money equation?
I really think that the primary thing for folks to look at is, like, how do you really like to work? And I don't know why this gets left out a lot, but it does. I mean, it's not rocket science what I'm saying here. But I think so often people, the only metric that they're looking at is, okay, I no longer can afford whatever reason to trade time for money, and I need to leverage. So the only metric they're looking at is money in that scenario. Like, how can I make the most money? That's the only thing. And they're not really factoring into that equation, like, how is it that I like to work? What feels most easeful for me? What feels most fun? for me? What feels like if I could show up and do this every day, like my life would feel juicy and like easeful, right? We're just looking at the money as the sole metric, because any leveraged offer is going to potentially get you more money, right? But not everyone is going to be a right fit for the way that you like to work and for your energy and for your capacity and all the things. And so that's really the question that I would ask folks is like, how do you like to work? For example, for me, it's depth, right? So I needed to find a leveraged offer that still allowed me to do that depth work with folks, because if I'm skimming the surface, if I am completely removed from my people and I'm just spitting out like videos or educational content and I'm not having any real like getting down in the dirt with my people, like face-to-face coaching time, I am not happy. And that is not going to allow my work to feel fulfilling. And it's also not going to be where the best transformation happens for people. And so for me, it became very clear. And again, this was a bit of a process of experimentation for me. It's like, okay, this high touch, like high level mastermind where I can have 2 pods of 5 or 6 people max on a call, that's my sweet spot. Like if I'm going to leverage an offer, that feels really good to me. It feels like it still allows me to be in my zone of genius. And the really brilliant thing is, as much as I loved one-on-one offerings, I'm like really starting to love this because the group dynamic brings more. I truly believe, we can't, this is a very trite saying at this point, but that we can't heal in isolation. And there's different friction points and triggers and things like that being in a group is going to bring up. And I find that really juicy. And I know that can be bad for some folks. And I'm like, one of my mentors says, thank you, I hate this. And so it's one of those things like, thank you, I hate this. It's like, I'm so sorry. This is what comes up. And this is also like a wonderful, beautiful opportunity. And you don't get that one-on-one. So I think that there's a lot of great things that's coming from this shift for me too. But that would really be the question that I would ask folks to consider is like, there's a million models of leveraged offers. Which one is most congruent with your zone of brilliance and the way you like to work?
There's a hidden mindset trap for me on this, because I think if I enjoy something so much and it's so easy for me, that means it has less value. That means I cannot charge a whole lot of money for it. Because I'm like, I would do this on my day off in the 5 minutes that I got, and it'll be amazing and have a huge impact for the other person. But it's so easy for me. I'm like, how can I charge money for this?
Yeah, which is, I love that you bring this up. I mean, that to me is a beautiful indicator that you are in your zone of brilliance. And so instead of, okay, like I hear this, what's the word, a coupling that's happened of if it's easy, it means it's not worth that much. Like that's been overcoupled here. Instead, uncoupling that and saying like, if it's easy, it actually means it's brilliant and it's my zone of brilliance, right? Can you couple those two things together instead?
Oh, that's so good. Because that is the direction that I'm trying to bring my business. What brings me the most joy? What is the easiest for me to produce? And then I was looking at what I equated as the income impact of those decisions. And I'm like, that doesn't look so good. But this new dynamic makes a lot more sense.
Yeah. I'd agree with that too, in terms of if it's feeling easy for you, you're probably really good at it. So you're actually providing more value.
I think there's a very real element of folks not being conscious to the things that are so easy for them, right? Because it doesn't take much effort for you. Well, of course, like everybody can do this, right? And then everybody else is over here like, no, I cannot do that. That's not something that comes easily to me, right? So, and this is another piece where community can come in great, right? Of somebody else being able to reflect that to you, like, no, that's not like a normal thing that's easy for me.
I had a conversation with a client recently because they wanted like an hourly rate, which I typically don't do ever. And one of the things was like, well, if it's only going to take you a short amount of time, like I don't want to, pay a lot of money for a little bit of your time. But I was like, well, it's not going to take me that long. But that's because like I've done it 500 times before and I'm really good at it. Like you could go find somebody who's going to take longer at it if you want to find some. I was just sort of one of those traps where I was like, my brain doesn't think this way. It's like, how long would it take you to do it? Or how much value is it actually going to deliver for you once it's done? Not just like, oh, it only took you 45 minutes. Well,
I love that. I love that reframe, Kara. And it's like, I've heard the saying, you're not paying for my time doing the thing. You're paying for all of the years of education and leading up to doing the thing, right?
Right.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I was at a pottery show because I love pottery. Like I have a problem with handmade pottery and storage for said pottery, right? So I was at this pottery show and one of my favorite potters just had her whole spread out. I was taking my time choosing just the right pieces. And this guy came up and he's like, wow, these are really beautiful. How long did it take you to do this? And she's like, 10 years. And just deadpan. And I just started cackling because I knew exactly the question she was really answering. And I'm like, yeah.
That's amazing. That is an amazing response. I wonder how many times she has used it.
I asked her, and she's like, yeah, I've used it a few times.
So good.
So I know you are very into human design. And I also, because I listen to your podcast, I know that we're both manifesting generators, which basically means, right? Yeah. So many entrepreneurs, we just have all of this creative energy all the time, which is a mixed blessing. But I'm curious, like, how do you think that affects how we approach entrepreneurship and motherhood and that intersection?
Okay, so in addition to being a manifesting generator, I love astrology, and I'm not also like super knowledgeable about astrology. I'm probably actually the most knowledgeable about the Enneagram, believe it or not.
Oh my gosh, same.
Yes, love the Enneagram. I'm a 6-wing 5. But the thing that I am really intrigued about is that I'm an Aries sun, Leo moon, Cancer rising, and almost all of my stuff is in my 10th house, which is career. Like I have so much fire in my career. Like anyone that has ever done a reading for me of my chart, they're like, whoa. But so I'm a 6-2 profile. I know I'm throwing out like lots of different things, but I'm a 6-2 profile in human design, which means I've got that whole on the roof thing, right? Of like, I really won't come to full maturation or like full potency of my work until I'm about 50 years old, which I have been like very disdainful about for a very long time. But all that to say, I think for me personally, and of course I can only speak to myself personally here, the way that I think it manifests for me is like, I love the creation phase. I love the invention phase. I go and pivot so quickly, and I can do things start to completion, pivot before, just leave people's head on a swivel. Like I move so fast. And anybody that has ever worked with me always says that. And I think it's quite ironic, actually, because I am highly sensitive. I'm a neurocomplex person. There's so much languaging around, oh, you got to move slower and you got to, all this stuff. And I'm like, my natural healthy pace is quite fast. And so for me, I think I had all of these ideas about like wanting to enjoy staying at home with my son more than what I did, and coming to a place of realizing that what is healthiest for me and my son is for me always to have that intellectual stimulation and that creative outlet of my business. And really, it's more so been finding the balance of that works for me. And I can always sense that in my body of like, if I'm working more than is actually congruent with my values, and I feel like I'm taking away from time with my son, I feel that. And then it's very much of like, okay, I need to pull back a little. And vice versa. If I am really been staying home a lot with my son and doing a lot of activities at home, it comes out very immediately and rapidly of like, I actually need some more intellectual stimulation and I need some more creative outlets because I'm starting to get snippy and not enjoy this. And that's not what I need either. So for me specifically, it's having enough of the creative outlet and a channel for that and a place and an energy for that to move, while also being able to invest in my son and being at home with him. I don't know if that answers your question, but
It does. And I love that there's so much of the somatic approach in what you're saying, because you're really listening to how this feels in your body, is what I'm hearing. It's like when things are off balance, you feel it and you're aware of it, which is also like for a lot of us, that's a long journey to figure that out.
Yeah. I don't think I have that yet necessarily. I have the like, okay, I am snapping at people when I shouldn't be. Now what's the problem, Kara? Like, yeah.
Connecting that, the mood and the emotional response and that like gut response, connecting that to, oh, there's a need that is not being met. Like I only figured that out a few years ago.
I just like to get there before I'm snapping. Like, okay. Like,
ideally.
Yeah. You're starting to feel a little bit off before you bite somebody's head off. Yeah.
it takes time, it takes practice. It's like this beautiful refinement process where you get more and more in tune with the more subtle body cues. You know, it's like when your body doesn't have to get to a point of screaming, or there doesn't have to be these big snapping moments, because you're like, you know, there's this little subtle thing that lets you know. And of course, this is not ever going to be perfect. And when you're in postpartum and you're sleep deprived, we miss those cues more often, right? We're all human, but there can be this refinement process. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I find so interesting about the postpartum period, because I think there are some real serious fundamental needs that are not able to be met because sleep is a big one.
Yeah. You can actually, I'm going to blank on this now because I'm now 6 years out, but there's something about the hormones that actually does make you better able to deal with the sleep deprivation to a point. But there is like a biological process that makes it a little bit more tolerable, a little bit more. But like, I still don't know, because I likewise was up in the middle of the night. There was a period where to keep my milk production up, I had to get up and pump 3 times overnight. So my baby wasn't even waking up to feed. It was like I just had to wake up to do that. And like now, I tell you, I get 9 beautiful hours of sleep a night, like 9. And that's like what I feel like I need. Like I get 8 and I'm not happy. I get 9. So I don't know how I functioned for like basically definitely a year of sleep was a mess. And then another like year to 2 years of just like interruptions. She was getting up very early. So like if I wanted to get 9 hours, I would have had to go to bed at like 8. So I don't know. It's an arc.
Yeah, you literally look back and you're like, how did I do that? Like, I don't really remember how I did that, but somehow I did. And yay, great. Congratulations to me.
Yeah, I functioned. It worked.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm just looking at the intersections of what you do professionally, which is helping highly sensitive neurodivergent entrepreneurs figure out like what actually works for them. And then I'm seeing so much crossover with just as a new mother rediscovering like, oh, what works for me right now? And that, you know, it's a new season, it's a new challenge. It's very much beginner's mind all of a sudden, which I haven't dealt with for a while because I'm 41. I've mastered what there is to master for the most part. And in so many ways, I'm starting from scratch. It's a weird place to be. So I am curious about that aspect of honoring your wiring and how you help your people to become aware of that. Like, what do they need in this moment? How do you help them figure that puzzle piece out?
I feel so much, just to name what this question brought up in me, I felt so much tenderness be brought up in me for this question, because there's such a huge identity shift that happens that can't not happen. when you have a child that really is forced upon you, right? And then especially if you're becoming a mom later in life, which I know we talked about, Lauren. I had my son when I was a few days away from 40. You're very well established in your routines. You're very well established in your identity. So it can be so much more challenging of like, it's more disorienting is what I want to say. There's more like, wait a second, how do I do this now? Who am I now? And what really strikes me about your question is that I think what trips people up the most is we're not radically honest with ourselves. And the thing that I most encourage folks to do, and I know that this can sound like, oh, well, sure, right? But like radical honesty is very confronting. It's extremely confronting because a lot of times it makes us confront what we wish was, but isn't. And if I'm radically honest with myself about this is what my capacity is right now in this season, about how much work I can take or how much work I want. If I'm radically honest with myself about this is the format of work that works best for me. I didn't name this earlier, but one of the reasons I loved the asynchronous in that time was I had such bad brain fog that clients would come to me and being able to replay the message and really digest it. And also I would literally tell my clients, I would take notes. Before I sent my voice memo back, I would send them just like a thing of notes that I had taken on what they shared with me. I don't know how I would have done a live call when I was forced to think on my feet more. My brain fog literally would not have allowed me to do that for a period of time. And that was just the reality of my situation. But if I was stuck in this place of, well, I should be more mentally sharp than this. I was like this before and I can be on my A game, and I was like stuck in this fear of like, well, maybe I'm never going to get it back and I just need to force myself to do this. We're not radically honest with ourselves. Like the radical honesty of my situation was my brain fog is such I cannot go on a live call because it will take, and I mean, it's just too taxing for my mental system. And so a lot of the answers to this come up for me, for my clients on coaching calls with friction points of they come to me and they're annoyed at XYZ thing. And I don't know why this isn't working. And I'm tired and I'm exhausted. Whatever the thing is. And then we realize and unpack together, well, that's because you're not being radically honest about this thing. You're not actually accepting, right, that you've got the brain fog, or that this is what your limited hours are in this season, or that this offering that worked so well for you and maybe was financially lucrative for you has lost all its juice and it's not the thing for you in this season. And there's grief in that, which is why we don't like to confront it. There's grief in it of what we wish was, of letting go of the identities, of what we think we should be able to do. And so we stay in this land, right, of like, well, this is what I should, and this is what they said, rather than actually getting into being radically honest with ourselves.
That is so good. And it's so difficult to do. I'm still coming to terms with my brain not being as sharp as it usually is, as Kara will attest, because I was like, I can't find the link to get on to the call. And she's like, it's in the calendar. And I was just looking at the calendar. It's things like that are just like, oh, my brain energy is redirected at this moment. I've got to have some new systems in place.
My husband has ADHD and is quite scattered in many things. And so like I was the one that, would constantly be kind of holding down the logistics and things of our household. And I was really sharp and holding everything together. And I would say for the entire first year, he was like, you are worse than me right now. Like, I don't know what's happened to you, but like, I can't trust you with anything in this moment. And I'm like, yeah, I know, I'm so sorry.
So that's actually one of my questions is the support systems that you put in place professionally and personally. So in your business and at home, what helped keep things going, even as they were shifting, even as they were morphing? What kind of support did you put in place?
I had a postpartum doula, highly recommend. And I was very obstinate, which is just part of my personality. And I've accepted that part of myself. But I had lots of ideas of like, I'm going to completely stay at home with him and I'm going to hire no help and I'm going to do this all on my own. And listen, I just believe that your children come out how your children come out. And like my son's nervous system was wired very anxiously from the moment that he was born. And he still, to this day, he's 2.5, has never slept away from us. I mean, like on our bodies, like has to be on our bodies. For the entire first year, he was contact napping and would not sleep without being on my body. And so for a long time, it was just like, well, I'm laying here, I'm nap trapped. I'll break out my phone and I'll like write things. I was writing my newsletters. I was writing my content. I was writing things because I mean, he's napping so much. I'm trapped most of the day. So it was really doing things in the pockets of time that I have, which was very hard shift for me. I don't know if you all experience this. I am like a completion girl. I want to do things to completion. I want to be able to like, okay, I started this. I go into hyper-focus mode. This is part of my neurocomplexity. I hyper-focus and I like, it really bothers me to have to turn something off and shut something down before I'm done with it. And so really letting go of that and being able to, okay, like he just woke up and he needs me. So I have to close this down right now. And then I'll have to come back to it during the next nap or whatever it is. There was a lot of that I had to switch and let go of. It was really challenging, but that was a way to like meet myself and support myself. And then at 9 months, we hired a nanny. And that was like a huge game changer. Wish I had done it earlier. And just being able to, you know, at the 9-month mark, okay, I can trust this person. I can leave my son with him. I'm still in the house. I'm not going anywhere. Allowed me to have that uninterrupted working time. Also hired, the nanny that we hired was a trained chef. Oh my gosh.
Oh my goodness.
So she would be like, Kim, do you want the bang bang chicken with like XYZ sauces? And I'm like, yes, I do. And she would come upstairs and she would like have it plated all beautifully and like decorative. And then I'm sitting there and she has the baby and I'm like, this, yes.
That's getting taken care of. Yeah.
So it was things like that where it was strategic. Of course, we kept our like house cleaners that were coming once a month. Receiving support, you know, is the thing that I would say. Receiving support, which I am not always great at. The postpartum period was challenging for me because it required me to receive a lot of support and like really confront my limits of I cannot do all of this. I can't do all of this. And so what things can I offload? What things can I outsource? What things can I let go of? What things do I need to shift the way that I'm working because this is not sustainable in this season? All of those things.
So good. My next to last question is about identity. That's the thing that I've been fascinated by, horrified by, scared pantsless by. I mean, just it's the thing that I've been wrestling with for the past 9 months, if not much longer, is that identity shift. What does change and what stays the same? So in your experience, what shifted? Because I know you said like your values shifted. And then what didn't? What stayed constant?
So with my neurocomplexity, the thing that has always been the most prominent challenge for me in my life is sensory processing, and specifically noise, the auditory component. And so much to my chagrin, that has not changed. And so when I am somebody who really requires a lot of stillness, a lot of quiet, which again can be interesting juxtaposition with I like to move fast, but I also require a very like low sensory environment. That is really challenging with a child. I probably don't need to explain why.
Yes.
For the first, year, he would scream for 8 to 10 hours a day. And just the impact of that on my own nervous system, I can't really even put into words. And even still now, it's like my husband has this recognition of like, when you have been exposed to too much stimulus from our son, you are a different person. It's like there is a switch that goes off in my nervous system that I literally, I can't override it. It just gets me to such a saturation point. And so, in other words, my sensory needs haven't changed. And now they are more taxed. And so I have to find ways to find these pockets of time for myself. And again, I've had to learn to ask for like, look, I've got to leave the house. Someone else has got to watch my kid, and I have got to leave so that I can come back and be a better parent. It's not congruent with my own values the way that I am showing up with him right now because I'm in a sensory overwhelmed state, right? So that hasn't changed. I already mentioned earlier the intellectual need, the intellectual stimulation need hasn't changed. My need, I've always been like a novelty seeker, I would say. I think that's part of my neurocomplexity as well. Like I backpacked the world by myself for months. I lived in Spain. I've backpacked all of Eastern and Western Europe, South America. Like travel is one of my hugest things. That has not changed. And I can't do it right now to the extent that I want. So it's like that need is still there. I can feel it still within me. I can feel kind of my intellectual drive still there. And it's the ability for it to be met is different in this season, but it doesn't mean that it's gone away. As far as what is different, you already mentioned my values. I would say even just there are little things of like, I do desire to be home more. I do desire to be with my son more. I find more pleasure in really simple things. I find myself really desiring, like the simple things of life are more beautiful to me. And I'm going to get emotional as I'm saying this. I feel like my heart was blown open when I had my son. And I am historically like a very protected person, a very like boundaried isn't the right word, but I've had like walls around my heart for various different reasons. And I feel like my son just kind of blew that wide open. And I've known that I'm a like very walled person because I am such a sensitive person, right? It goes hand in hand of like, I've been so hurt from being so sensitive that I had to protect myself in some ways. And I feel like my son came out and it was like, not a chance anymore. Like there was just like this, okay, I'm going to feel everything exquisitely. Like every nerve fiber in my being is highly attuned. I'm just exquisitely aware of the thing that has changed is how much more aware I am of death. And I know that may sound really strange, but I've actually talked to a lot of mothers who say the same thing. Like giving birth makes you more aware of death and makes you like, I'll give a really pertinent and recent example. So again, when my son was little, he really craved motion and I would spend my whole day in the rocking chair because he just loved to move. And it's like we were breastfeeding. I would spend hours and hours in the rocking chair, just rocking, looking out the window. And we haven't done the rocking chair in a long time now. He's outgrown that. And the other day, and he's so tall, he's been in the 100th percentile for his height. My husband is 6'2". I'm 5'9". Like he's just going to be, I don't even know how tall he's going to be, but there's no hope for him to not be tall. And so he's been 100th percentile for forever. And so he's got like these really long limbs. And he was like, Mama, let's rock. And I was like, okay, buddy, let's do it. And he's sitting there and he like laid his head on me. And I'm looking and I'm like, the last time I was in this rocking chair, and I'm going to cry again, he fit, right? In my hands. He fit just like curled into me. And now we're in this rocking chair and his legs are like sprawling off of the end of it. And this is what I mean of like the exquisite awareness of death, because the time passing, the time marching on, the time like from here to here, it's like, whoa, what happened? Like you no longer fit. And there's so much grief in that you can't keep them bottled up. So I would say that I'm exquisitely more sensitive, aware, attuned, sensitive, even more so than I already was. That's probably enough of an explanation, but I'm sure there are other things.
There was a quote, I'm going to butcher it badly, but I read it at some point when my daughter was probably around the same age as your son, but it was like, for all of us, it was like a last time your parents picked you up. My daughter's also very tall, and she's like almost hitting that point where, like, I can still pick her up, but I'm like, it's going to come soon where it's just not going to be a thing that, like, you just don't pick them up and carry them around anymore like you used to. So,
or the last time they grab your hand, the last time they ask for help in something. God, before becoming a parent, I would have never imagined how excruciating that is.
I was somebody who was very stoic, really never cried. Something my family would kind of needle me, didn't cry at grandma's funeral, didn't do this. Now I cry all the time. I see a commercial and I'm like, oh my God, it's so sweet.
Yeah, and it's beyond the hormonal period, right? It's beyond the immediate postpartum. It just opens you up to life in a way, I think.
Yeah.
My witchy feminist therapist that I worked with for a while, as part of my preparation for this motherhood journey, she was also very into astrology, and she's like, there's no water in your chart. It all makes sense. Because I'm not emotional.
That's so funny.
I'm starting to get emotional. I'm going to shut that down.
Bring more of it out, though. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think it's going to. Oh, thank you so much. So is there anything that you would like to share in terms of how to work with you, how to find you, how to listen to your amazing podcast? What should people know?
Yeah, thank you. I have so enjoyed this conversation. It's been really nourishing for me. So thank you both for having me on. It's been so fun. I have some really fun things coming up that I would love to share with you all. I have 3 different workshops coming up, and they kind of can be done in a bundle and all together or individually. The first is called a Visibility Lab, and we're going to play with expanding our edges of expressing ourselves in our business. So that's going to be really fun. It's a month long in October, so that one's coming out shortly. And then in January, I'm running my kind of signature workshop, When Resistance Rises Again. And that is just whenever you feel that resistance come up in your business, really learning how to support yourself through it rather than getting stuck in it or self-flagellating and blaming yourself about it. And then the last workshop that I have in March of next year is going to be about setting boundaries with clients and teams. And not from what I'm really so excited about with this is that people all the time are like, I don't want people to be mad at me, and I'm worried that my team is going to get upset and all this stuff. People know what to say. We don't need scripts. We need to learn how to deal with the somatic charge that comes up when we set the boundaries, right? Actually learning to stay with ourselves through that. So those are my 3 things that I have coming up soon that I would love you all to check out. But KimKimballCoaching.com. My podcast is Sensitive, as you already said. If you search Sensitive with Kim Kimball, it'll come up, and love to see you in my orbit.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much.